The chamber was impossibly vast, a domed colosseum of polished obsidian and shimmering blue light, where hundreds of alien dignitaries sat in judgment. At its center, beneath a throne of spiraling silver tendrils, loomed High Chancellor Zalzoreth, his golden eyes fixed on the small delegation of humans standing before him. He looked almost amused. Captain Elias Voss stood at the forefront, his crisp Terran fleet uniform immaculate despite the oppressive weight of the moment. He had studied the history of this council. Dozens of species had stood where he now stood, their representatives trembling as they accepted the terms of subjugation. He could see it in the way the aliens watched him, waiting for the inevitable. A voice, cold and precise, echoed through the chamber. "Humanity of soul, your time of decision is now. You stand at the threshold of unity or annihilation." The translator's synthetic tones stripped the words of emotion, but Zalzoreth's expression did not need embellishment. The High Chancellor leaned forward, his ornate robes shifting like liquid metal. "Submit, Captain Voss. Swear fealty to the Galactic Council, pledge your fleets to our dominion, and your people will be spared. You will be granted a position within our order, a lesser one, of course, but one that ensures survival." Voss clasped his hands behind his back. "Survival," he repeated, as if tasting the word. His gaze drifted over the gathered officials, elders of ancient empires, creatures of towering intellect and immeasurable arrogance. They all shared the same belief, that humanity's resistance was an inconvenience, not a threat. That submission was inevitable. He let the silence stretch just a moment too long, let them think he was considering. Then he smiled. "You misunderstand, Chancellor." His voice was calm, deliberate. "We are not here to negotiate terms of surrender. We are here to deliver our answer." A ripple of confusion passed through the assembly. A dozen alien voices murmured in different tongues. Zalzoreth's amusement did not waver, but something behind his eyes darkened. "You believe you have a choice," the High Chancellor mused. "Fascinating." He gestured with one clawed hand, and a holographic projection flared to life between them. A great armada of Council warships, stretching across the stars like an endless tide, their hulls pulsing with violet energy. "This is the force we have sent to your system," Zalzoreth said. "Even now they move towards Sol, prepared to bring your world to compliance. If you choose resistance, your people will be reduced to ash." Commander Voss didn't so much as blink. He knew this was coming. Knew they would make their threats, show their overwhelming force, expecting him to crumble. He tilted his head slightly. "That's quite the fleet," he admitted. "Impressive." Zalzoreth's lips curled. "Then you see reason." Voss took a single step forward. "I see a mistake." The murmurs grew louder. The Council had not expected defiance, not like this. There had been other species who resisted, of course. Fleeting rebellions, desperate uprisings that were crushed before they could begin. They had expected humanity to bluster, to stall for time, maybe even to fight a feudal war before falling in line. But not this. Not calm certainty. Not the kind of confidence that suggested the Council was not dealing with prey, but with a predator. Zalzoreth's amusement flickered, replaced by something colder. "You believe your primitive fleets can stand against the full might of the Council?" Voss chuckled, and for the first time, the High Chancellor's expression shifted, not much, but enough. Because amusement was one thing. Dismissal was expected. But mockery? Mockery from an inferior species was unheard of. "Chancellor," Voss said, "you seem to believe your fleet is moving towards Sol." "It's not." The murmurs stopped. Silence thickened in the chamber, as heavy as the void between the stars. Zalzoreth narrowed his golden eyes. "Explain yourself." Voss reached into his uniform's inner pocket and retrieved a small device, a simple metallic disc. He pressed his thumb to its surface, and a new hologram flickered to life beside the Council's projection. It was not an image of Earth's system, nor of the Terran homeworld, but of deep space. The Galactic Council's fleet. Or rather, what was left of it. Burning wreckage floated amidst the debris field, shattered hulls drifting aimlessly. The once mighty armada had been reduced to little more than smoldering ruins. Gasps rippled through the chamber. A reptilian dignitary recoiled, mandibles clicking in disbelief. A pale-skinned envoy with bioluminescent veins let out a soft hiss. Even Zalzoreth did not immediately speak. Voss let them absorb the image before he continued. "We knew you would send a fleet. We knew you would come with overwhelming force, expecting an easy victory." His voice remained steady, conversational even. "So we met you first." He turned slightly, tapping the projection, shifting the perspective. More ships emerged from the darkness, sleek, angular warships of Earth's finest engineering, moving with lethal precision. The Council's forces had never reached Sol. The moment they dropped out of hyperspace, they had been met with something they did not expect. Superior tactics. Superior firepower. And something even more terrifying. Preparedness. Zalzoreth stared at the devastation, his claws flexing against the armrest of his throne. "Impossible," he murmured. "This is falsified. A deception?" Voss merely raised an eyebrow. "You're welcome to verify." He gestured toward one of the Council's intelligence officers. A nervous, many-eyed being quickly typed into a glowing interface. The results appeared instantly. The Council's fleet, confirmed destroyed. A deep, seething silence followed. Voss clasped his hands behind his back once more. "You asked for our answer, Chancellor." He leaned in slightly, voice dropping to a near whisper. "This is it." For the first time in centuries, the Council felt fear. Zalzoreth's hands curled into fists, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, his lips parted, and what emerged was not rage, nor fury, nor even defiance. It was a smile. "So," the High Chancellor murmured, "you do have teeth after all." Voss returned the grin. "We have much more than that." The chamber remained frozen, the gathered species staring at the unfolding moment in galactic history. A species that had been expected to bow had just drawn first blood. The war had begun. The wreckage of the first battle still drifted through the void, silent testimony to the Galactic Council's mistake. Where once had been an invincible armada, there was now only scorched debris and dying embers of once mighty warships. The Council had underestimated humanity. Now, the real war would begin. Captain Elias Voss stood at the center of the Dauntless, his flagship's bridge a sleek expanse of holographic displays and quiet efficiency. Beyond the reinforced viewport, the shattered remains of the Council's vanguard spun in weightless oblivion. His crew moved with a controlled urgency, analyzing data, confirming kills, preparing for what came next. "Council reinforcements have been dispatched," Commander Tessa Raines reported, her sharp gaze scanning the latest intelligence feed. "They're regrouping at Wolf 359. 37 capital ships, support cruisers, 2 dreadnoughts. They're coming in force this time." Voss absorbed the information. The Council wasn't retreating, they were retaliating. He had expected as much. A single battle wouldn't be enough to shatter their arrogance. No, they needed to be taught a lesson they wouldn't forget. "Send word to the fleet," he said, his voice calm, measured. "We meet them at Wolf 359. No drawn-out engagements. We hit hard and fast, break them before they even know what's happening." Across the bridge, a murmur of approval rippled through his officers. There was no hesitation, no doubt. They knew what was at stake. Humanity would not bow. As the Dauntless led the fleet into hyperspace, Voss allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. The Council had spent centuries subjugating species, erasing cultures, breaking worlds. They saw themselves as inevitable. But inevitability had never met Earth before. Minutes later, they dropped out of hyperspace. Wolf 359 stretched before them, its red dwarf star casting long shadows against the darkness. The enemy fleet had already begun to assemble, their formations tightening, preparing for an overwhelming advance. "Council ships holding position," Raines confirmed. "They're waiting for the last of their forces to arrive before moving in." Voss smirked. "Then let's not give them that chance." He turned to his tactical officer. "Deploy the ghosts." A single nod. Then, from the depths of Earth's fleet, blackened hulls slipped free of their carriers, small, agile strike craft designed for one purpose: infiltration and chaos. The Ghost-class stealth frigates vanished into the void, their advanced cloaking systems rendering them undetectable to traditional scans. The enemy didn't see them. Not until it was far too late. Phase 1: Disrupt their coordination, Voss ordered. Across the battlefield, the Ghosts went to work. Electronic warfare pulses flooded the enemy's systems, scrambling sensors, distorting communication relays. Their formations wavered, confusion rippling through their ranks. Then, the real attack began. All ships engage! The Dauntless surged forward, flanked by Earth's most formidable warships. They cut through the battlefield like precision blades, targeting command vessels, severing supply lines, creating chaos where there should have been order. Council warships retaliated, firing massive energy lances, but they were too slow. Humanity's ships were smaller, more agile, built for adaptability rather than brute force. They weaved between attacks, striking with deadly precision. Aboard his own command ship, Zalzorath watched the battle unfold. The confidence he had held in the Council's superiority began to wane. His forces had numbers, firepower, centuries of dominance behind them. Yet the humans fought with something else: ruthless efficiency, relentless adaptability. "High Chancellor," one of his aides stammered, "their movements are erratic, unpredictable. They're dismantling our fleet piece by piece." Zalzorath's jaw tightened. "Then we change the game." He turned to his fleet's admiral, a towering brute of a creature. "Deploy the dreadnoughts. Let them burn." The shift was immediate. The two Behemoth-class warships surged forward, their sheer mass warping gravity around them. Their cannons ignited, sending city-sized energy blasts ripping through space. One of humanity's smaller frigates took a direct hit, vanishing in a fiery explosion. The Council had brought their most devastating weapons to the field. But Voss had been waiting for this. "Phase 2, he said coolly. "Take them down." From the shadows of the battlefield, Earth's Thunderstorm-class bombers emerged, heavy ordnance locked onto the dreadnoughts. They darted through the chaos, launching high-yield kinetic torpedoes designed to punch through even the thickest armor. One dreadnought took a direct hit to its primary reactor. A fireball erupted from within as its power core detonated, sending molten wreckage spiraling into the abyss. The second dreadnought attempted to reposition, but its systems had already been compromised. The Ghosts had slipped into their networks, shutting down propulsion, disabling shields. A final torpedo strike found its mark. The second dreadnought broke apart in a silent explosion, scattering debris across the void. Silence gripped the Council's remaining forces. Their greatest weapons had been turned into tombs. Aboard the Dauntless, Voss exhaled slowly. Now they understand. Across the battlefield, the Council's surviving ships hesitated. The certainty of victory had been shattered. Their cohesion was gone. "High Chancellor," a desperate voice came through Zalzorath's comms. We cannot hold. We must fall back." For a long moment, Zalzorath said nothing. His claws dug into the armrest of his throne. This was not how the battle was supposed to unfold. Humanity was not supposed to win. Yet here they were. "Retreat," he finally growled. The remaining Council ships began their withdrawal, limping back into hyperspace. The Battle of Wolf 359 was over. And humanity had just delivered the second lesson in a war that was only beginning. As the debris settled, Voss turned to Rains. "Status report. Minimal losses," she confirmed. "We crushed their primary fleet, eliminated their dreadnoughts. We own this sector now." Voss nodded. The message had been sent. Humanity would not be conquered. Zalzorath would come again. He would bring everything he had. But when that day came, humanity would be ready. The aftermath of Wolf 359 lingered in the void. The once proud fleet of the Galactic Council had been reduced to twisted wreckage, drifting through the darkness like the bones of a fallen empire. Humanity had struck first, and the galaxy was beginning to take notice. Aboard the Dauntless, Captain Elias Voss stood in the war room, surrounded by the core leadership of Earth's fleet. A massive holographic display projected real-time intelligence across the table, a map of Council-controlled space, littered with red-marked strongholds and fleet movements. Commander Tessa Raines studied the data. The Council's forces are pulling back to their inner colonies. They're consolidating, reinforcing key systems. No signs of immediate retaliation. Voss nodded. They're wounded, but they're not beaten. They won't make the same mistake twice. Across the table, Admiral Carter Graves leaned forward, his weathered face unreadable. Then we hit them before they recover. There was a moment of silence as the weight of his words settled. Voss folded his arms. You're suggesting an offensive? Graves met his gaze. You think we have another option? We've made our stand. If we give them time to regroup, they'll come back stronger. His voice was steady, certain. We take the fight to them. No one argued. They all knew what was coming. Humanity had shattered the illusion of invulnerability surrounding the Council, but the real war was just beginning. Voss turned back to the holographic display. Targets? Raines adjusted the interface, bringing a new system into focus. Archeon Prime. It's one of their primary logistical hubs. Strategic Command Center, major fleet resupply point. We cripple it, and they'll feel it across multiple sectors. Graves nodded. A direct strike won't be easy. They'll be expecting us. A smirk tugged at the corner of Voss's lips. Then we won't be predictable. The plan took shape quickly. They wouldn't engage the Council in a prolonged siege. Humanity's strength lay in its ability to strike hard, move fast, and adapt. The fleet would deploy in staggered waves, drawing enemy forces away from the core installation, while a precision strike team infiltrated and dismantled Archeon Prime's command structure from within. Raines exhaled sharply. High risk, high reward. Voss met her gaze. That's how we win. With a single nod, the plan was set in motion. The Dauntless and its fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Archeon system, their arrival a whisper against the vastness of space. The enemy was waiting. The Council had learned. Defense platforms ringed the planet, automated batteries primed to unleash devastation. Warships patrolled the sector, their formations tight, their weapons ready. Enemy fleet detected, Raines reported. Multiple battle groups, dreadnought support. They know we're coming. Voss was unfazed. Good. Let them think they have the upper hand. A signal was sent. The first wave of Earth's fleet surged forward, weapons blazing. It was a calculated assault, just enough pressure to demand a response. The Council forces moved to engage, their formations shifting, positioning to counter what they assumed was the full extent of the attack. They never saw the second wave coming. From the far side of the system, concealed by the shadow of a dead moon, a second Terran strike group emerged, slipping past the enemy's front lines. A surgical incursion. Their target, the heart of Archeon Prime's command infrastructure. Aboard one of the lead assault shuttles, Voss stood with his strike team. The craft rattled as it cut through the planet's upper atmosphere, piercing the defensive perimeter under the cover of the main battle. ETA 2 minutes, the pilot announced. Defensive batteries still online. Voss glanced at Raines, who was securing her gear. We need those guns disabled before the fleet takes too much damage. She gave him a dry look. You think I don't know that? The shuttle bucked violently as a near-miss explosion sent a shockwave through the hull. The pilot cursed under his breath, struggling to keep them steady. We're punching through. The moment they hit the surface, the doors burst open. Voss and his team moved with practiced precision, weapons raised, boots hitting the metallic ground of the Council's sprawling command complex. Alarms screamed through the installation. They had been detected. A squad of alien soldiers emerged from a nearby corridor, weapons snapping to aim. Voss fired first, his rifle spitting controlled bursts. The lead hostile dropped before it could return fire. The rest scrambled for cover. Raines and her fire team flanked right, pressing the attack. Explosions rippled through the facility as sabotage teams planted charges along critical infrastructure. "We need to move!" Rains shouted. "Reinforcements inbound!" Voss led the charge deeper into the complex. They weren't here for a prolonged firefight, they had a singular objective. The control center loomed ahead, a reinforced chamber at the heart of the base. Security forces had already locked it down. Heavy turrets lined the approach, their barrels glowing hot, primed to tear the strike team apart. "Suggestions?" Voss muttered. Rains tapped her comms. "Ghosts, we need a backdoor." Seconds later, the facility's lighting flickered. A surge of static rippled through the enemy's automated defenses. The turrets powered down. "That's our window," Voss ordered. "Move!" They breached the control room in a controlled, brutal assault. The defenders barely had time to react. Within moments, the chamber was secure. Voss strode to the central console, tearing off the interface panel. "How long?" he asked Rains. She worked fast, fingers dancing across the alien controls. "I can lock them out of their own system, but not for long. We have minutes before they override." "Minutes are all we need." He activated his comms. "Fleet, this is Voss. Target acquired. Bring the house down." From orbit, Earth's warships unleashed hell. Precision strikes tore through Archeon Prime's defenses. The automated gun platforms fell silent, the planetary shield generators collapsed. The Council's stronghold was burning. Rain stepped back, her work done. Time to go. They fought their way back to the extraction point, the entire complex shaking with the force of the orbital bombardment. Enemy forces were in full disarray. The base was lost. As the shuttle lifted off, Voss took one last look at the chaos below. The Council had thought Archeon Prime untouchable. They had been wrong. The moment their fleet regrouped in deep space, confirmation came through: Archeon Prime was no longer operational. The ripple effect would spread across multiple sectors. Humanity had struck again. But Voss knew this was only the beginning. Zalzorath would not take this humiliation lightly. The war was escalating, and humanity had no intention of stopping. The aftermath of Archeon Prime's destruction sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The Council's forces, once seen as an unbreakable arm of authority, were now fractured, scrambling to contain the growing rebellion that humanity had ignited. But while the battle had been a success, Captain Elias Voss knew the war was far from won. The Council would retaliate with everything they had. The only question was when. Aboard the Dauntless, tension filled the air. The crew worked tirelessly, repairing damage, analyzing enemy movements, and preparing for the inevitable response. In the war room, Voss studied the latest intelligence reports, his mind already moving 3 steps ahead. Commander Tessa Rains stood beside him, arms crossed. "Scouts picked up movement near Epsilon Eridani. The Council is regrouping, but it's different this time. They're not just reinforcing, they're consolidating power." Voss glanced at the holographic display. A cluster of Council fleets had formed a defensive perimeter around key strongholds. Their typical pattern of widespread control had changed. They were shifting to a war footing. "They're learning," he murmured. Rains exhaled sharply. "And adapting. They won't just throw numbers at us anymore." Admiral Carter Graves stepped forward, his face grim. "Then we need to break them before they have a chance to strike back." Voss nodded. "We can't let them dig in. If they fortify their core systems, we'll lose our advantage. We need to force their hand." A moment of silence passed as they considered their next move. The war had reached a turning point. One wrong step, and humanity could lose everything it had fought for. Rains tapped the console, bringing up a new sector. "We've identified a critical target. Corthian 7, one of their largest shipyards. They're mass-producing warships, likely in preparation for a counteroffensive." Graves studied the layout. "Taking it out would cripple their supply lines." Voss leaned forward. "We hit them fast, leave no time for reinforcements. But this won't be like Archeon Prime. This time, they know we're coming." Rains gave him a knowing look. Then we make them think we're going somewhere else. The strategy took shape quickly. A diversionary assault would be launched at a secondary installation, drawing the Council's defenses away from Corthian 7. While their forces scrambled to respond, a strike team would infiltrate the shipyard and sabotage it from within. Voss turned to Graves. Can your team handle the distraction? The Admiral smirked. I'll make sure they think it's the main event. Everything was set. Now, all that remained was execution. The battle began exactly as planned. Earth's fleet launched a full-scale assault on a heavily defended outpost, luring the bulk of the Council's forces away. The enemy responded predictably, deploying reinforcements in an attempt to counter the attack. But while they were occupied, the Dauntless and a handful of stealth ships slipped into the Corthian system undetected. Voss sat in the cockpit of a dropship as it descended toward the shipyard's surface. The facility sprawled across the landscape, massive hangars filled with incomplete warships, assembly lines churning out the next wave of Council dreadnoughts. Rains sat across from him, checking her weapon. We get in, overload their reactors, and get out. No delays. Voss gave a small nod. No delays. The moment the dropship touched down, the strike team moved with precision. The shipyard's outer defenses were light. Most of the security had been pulled to reinforce the decoy battle. They advanced quickly, taking down patrols before alarms could be raised. Reaching the main control center, Rains hacked into the system, bypassing firewalls with practiced ease. I've got access to their reactors. Overloading them now. An alert blared through the facility. The enemy had caught on. Voss turned to his team. Hold the perimeter. Armed guards poured into the chamber, plasma fire lighting up the dark corridors. Voss and his team returned fire, covering Rains as she completed the override sequence. Explosions echoed through the shipyard as energy surged through unstable reactors. We need to move, Rains called. Fighting their way through the collapsing structure, they reached the extraction point just as the reactors went critical. The ground trembled beneath them as the shipyard was consumed in a massive detonation, sending shockwaves through the surrounding area. Aboard the Dauntless, they watched from orbit as the facility crumbled. The Council had lost another vital asset. But as the dust settled, an urgent message came through. Sir? A communications officer called out. We're picking up a transmission from the Council. Voss exchanged a look with Rains. Put it through. The main display flickered, revealing a familiar face. Zalzoreth. The High Chancellor's expression was unreadable, but there was no mistaking the anger burning behind his eyes. You have made your point, human, Zalzoreth said, voice cold. But you have also made a grave mistake. Voss folded his arms. Have I? Zalzoreth's gaze darkened. You think yourselves victorious because you have struck at our empire's flesh. But you have yet to face its heart. He leaned forward, his voice a quiet threat. The full force of the Council is now coming for you. No more skirmishes. No more mercy. We will burn your worlds to ash. The transmission cut out. A heavy silence filled the bridge. Rains let out a slow breath. Well, that's not good. Voss stared at the empty screen. The war had begun in earnest. And humanity would be ready.